Welcome back, tiny friends, to another episode of the Pet Cemetery. Today I'm going to be working on some tree stumps and adding a few details into the front section. I'm going to try and take these stumps up a level from the trees that I made in the last video, and I'll show you in a little bit what those look like. I found these bags of cut stumps at a Dollar Tree store, but none of my local Dollar Trees carried these. I actually found these in New Hampshire when I was visiting. So I stocked up on a few different bags. They had a few different options to choose from. And I'm going to work on these. Now, even though they're real, I love the way they look. I love that they have peeling bark. Some of them look like they're from birch trees. And since they're cut from branches, they don't really have the details that I need them to have. Now, this is another bag and just a different option that they offered. I like this piece. I'm going to pull this piece out. I'm only going to be able to make 2 of these today because I ran out of masking tape and had to go and get more. So I'm just going to make 2 and just add some more details to the front section. So this one piece, I tried working on this prior and it just was not working out. There's a slice right here from it being cut. And I think I'm going to use this piece today because I like the little piece that's coming off of it. Whatever I was trying just wasn't working. And I said, no, this isn't happening. So I'm going to go ahead and fix this up. So I'll use this piece and I'll just pick one more and we'll see what happens. Okay, so here is one of the trees that I made in the last episode, and you can get a really good look at the bark on this. And I am just going to consider these trees to be young trees because after the end results of the stump, that's kind of what they ended up looking like. And we'll just call these young or younger trees. One of my viewers, the lovely Melinda Jones, suggested that I check out Where the Gnomes Live, and she had great bark making techniques. Well, I thought that was a great idea because I have been a subscriber of Where the Gnomes Live since way before I started my channel and absolutely love her channel. I went over to visit her bark making videos and realized that I had watched these long ago. So I rewatched them to refresh in the ideas. And I'm going to apply some of those techniques to these stumps. I just thought, okay, yeah, this is going to help me out a lot. So thank you so much, Melinda, for suggesting that I head over to her channel and reminding me that she's got amazing techniques for her trees. Okay, so I'm going to start off with a little bit of this foil. Now, I'm just using a little bit because I'm just making tiny tree stumps. If you go on over to Where the Gnomes Live, or if you're a subscriber of hers, you'll know that she's making this giant tree and she makes bigger tree stumps than what I'm doing here. But this process is basically the same. It doesn't matter what size you're making. So I'm just taking a little bit of the foil and just lightly scrunching it up. I'm not scrunching it too tight, and I'm just going to apply it to the stump. I do want some of it to hang over the top edge on part of it because I feel like that just gives it more of an interesting detail. Like maybe the tree had broken off, or I just feel like that's, most likely to happen with older trees. So I'm applying this with hot glue and I'm just going to repeat the process all the way around. It is best to use a foil that does not say nonstick. And I just got lucky with the foil that I had. It just didn't say nonstick, so I didn't have to go and buy more. And also, you want to keep in mind what size stump you're choosing because this really bulks it up and makes it a lot bigger than what it is. So I'm not going to be able to use some of those really giant ones that you see on the table. I'm going to have to stick with the smaller ones to stay more in scale to the project. I'm just going to use my hot glue gun to apply the foil and repeat the process all the way around. Okay, so I'm moving on to the masking tape, which will be the next step after you apply your foil. You want to cover it up with some masking tape. And I also added a little bit of foil, creating some roots on this one stump. So I'm going to cover that up as well. And I also added a little more on this side to bulk it out just a little more. Okay, next I'm going to be applying the clay. And you can use any type of air dry clay. I'm using paper clay. You can use homemade clay as long as it's an air dry clay. And I am using a little bit of water to help this clay have a little extra moisture. So it's a little easier for me to apply it and spread it around. It does help to have a wet wipe handy so that you can wrap your piece of clay in while you're applying the smaller amounts. I'm working really quick with this, so I wasn't really worried about having a wet wipe. Not only that, I'm using a little bit of water to help it keep its moisture as I'm applying this. But it's pretty handy and helpful to have that, and also to use it for your fingers if you want to clean your fingers while you're going along. So as I'm applying this layer of clay, I am not worried about adding any details. I'm just focusing on trying to get this clay on here and nicely attached so it's nice and secure. I do kind of spread it out a little bit and maybe smooth down some of the thicker areas to make sure that it's pretty even, make sure that it's pretty consistent all the way around. I just want to get this on here and make sure that it's not loose. I will kind of shape it a little bit as I go around, but my main focus is to just get this clay securely attached. And then I'll detail it in the next step. Okay, all the clay is on there, and before I add my detail, I'm just using a little bit of water on my fingers to smooth everything down. Make sure that there's no detachment between the pieces that I've added, and it's all one whole cohesive piece. Okay, so I'm going to take my little clay knife and just make some crisscross lines. I am still making straight lines as well, but mostly crisscrossing these lines over one another. And I'm also going to leave in that clay fuzz. I'm not going to remove that this go round. So this is the technique, one of the techniques that I got from Where the Gnomes Live. And I feel like this just brings up the detail another level. And leaving those clay fuzzies behind will actually just add to the age of the tree. When I made the other trees, I didn't bother crisscrossing the lines. I just made straight wavy lines all around. And I also lightly sanded off the little clay fuzzy beads that form from actually sculpting in the clay. So that's why they kind of look like they're younger trees. Going in on the top, I'm using my silicone sculpting tool to just add the aging circles, the rings. And I'm not being perfect. I literally just went in and did some swirling really quickly. And I'm going to do it a second round as well. I'm just going to go in and swirl it another round. I'm not going to pay attention. I don't want it to be perfect. I just want those swirls to be in there and not look like they were intentionally made. Okay, so this one is completed. I like the way it looks. I'm going to move on to complete the other one and let them sit in front of my fan for a few hours. I'm going to move on to this stick, which is a broken stick that I found outside. And I'm going to add a piece of wire to the bottom to make it look like it's a broken dead tree. And there is already an angled cut here at the bottom, so it's going to lean forward, make it look like it's kind of falling. And there's a tiny little spot that's already in the middle, so I'm just going to go with that and drill a little hole, just a little way in. It doesn't have to go far in, just enough to where I can put that piece of wire in and it'll stay nice and secured. But I am going to add some tacky glue to glue this into place. and then I can put this into the ground. Okay, I went ahead and made the hole in the ground. So now I'm just going to put this in place. I am using tacky glue and hot glue so that the hot glue will keep it steady and secure while the tacky glue is drying. Behind this tree is going to be a pile of old wood scraps, like pieces that the children have, brought in or didn't use or can use. So there needs to be a pile of wood there. I'm going to go ahead and make that. And I have just pulled out some scrap pieces of my wood. This is the best way to make old looking wood. Just go get your scrap pieces and pick out some things that you like. Okay, I have picked out and cut down the pieces that I want to use, and I'm going to beat them up really bad now. So I'm going to use one of my needle files, and this one is a square one, but I use a round one as well. I guess it just depends on what I grab. And I'm going to use my X-Acto knife. So the first step is to just kind of scratch up this wood with my X-Acto knife, make some splits and slices, and I also like to nick the ends. So I'll go in on the ends and carve out some triangle wedges, and I'll make some grooves in the sides and carve out some of pieces in the sides. And this kind of takes, a few steps. It's a process to get this wood to look old and aged. So right now I'm just making those wedges and some splits on the ends. Next, I'll go in with my needle file, whether I'm using the round one or this. I'm just going in on the edges where I cut those wedges out and just filing those grooves a little bit deeper. I'll go in with a poker tool and just add some wormholes, and I'm just trying to be careful about this because I've already broken a couple of my poker tools. But when I do this, I kind of just like push down on one side and it leaves an impression behind. Okay, so now that I have pretty much damaged all these pieces, it's ready to paint. And this one was an old piece that was already painted, so I'm going to leave that as is and just add a little bit of color later. I usually stick with my antique wax, and this is the brand that I normally use, the Waverly, but I thought this would be a great opportunity to try the Craftsmart brand since I have not tried that yet. And I usually stick with the browns, blacks, and grays for aging my wood. So I'm just going to use what's on the foil. They both look pretty much the same, and they both look like they have the same consistency. This is an older bottle and I've had it for years, so it's a little thicker on the bottom. But normally when you get a fresh bottle, it pretty much looks just like this. So I'm going to do a couple different things, and I normally just stick with the same three colors, but I do different painting processes. So I'm going to choose a couple of these and give them a brown base as if this wood was once stained and start from it being a nice stained piece of wood. So I'm just going to pick a few and give them some antique wax, or you could use a watered down brown acrylic for this. And when I'm doing this, I always use paint washes. So I always add water to the paint. I never use the paint as is, where you'll get that nice solid coat. I just do layers of washes, but I stick with the three main colors, and then I go in with highlights, which I'll show you later on. And I always switch it up. I never do the same thing, but I do stick with the same three colors. So you can see I'm dipping my brush in the water, even with the wax. For some of these, I'm going to start with a black wash. So I'm just adding a little bit of black to the water that's in my dish and just spreading it all around. So I'm just picking random pieces and coating them with the black wash first. And then for some of these, I'll do a gray wash first. So I like to switch it up, but I normally just stick with these three main colors and then add in maybe a light beige or a light gray or a white for some highlights. And I'll go in with the black to seep into those grooves to bring those out, to do some more contrasting with the black. I've been asked several times about how I age my wood, and there really isn't a specific order that I go in because I do like to switch up the layering. I do always use these main colors. I guess it's all about the detailing of really banging that wood up and getting those details in there, because you can layer the paint any way you'd like. Sometimes I layer while the paint is still wet. Sometimes I layer when the paint is dry. It just all depends how I feel. There's really no wrong way to do this. The thing that I do most consistently is beating up the wood and using the three main colors. When it comes to layering the paint and the washes, that changes all the time. After adding that little whiteboard, I wanted to add some more color to some of these other boards. So I just gave these two pieces a little bit of paint and then roughly sanded off some areas. And now I'm just going in with a black wash to seep into all those details. For my highlights, depending on what the wood color looks like, I'll choose a light gray, a white, or even a light beige and just dry brush some of the areas. In the end, you should be able to see all the different tones and layers of color that you've added. Now it's time to paint the stumps. So of course, just like the trees, I'm going in with a base layer of black. And I'm giving it one good solid coat, and then I'll go in 3 or 4 times to hit all those little white specks that pop up. Okay, while those are drying, I wanted to work on the little detail that I wanted to add to the dairy sign. This is the little Easter egg that I came up with. I did do some test runs with different mediums to seal the ink in because I am using an inkjet printer. Starting from the left side of the screen, the first row doesn't have any sealer on it. That's as is. The second row is Mod Podge. The third row, I used something completely out of the ordinary. I'll show you in a second. But this last row, I used the satin varnish by Duraclear. And it turned out to be that third row, with this one right here, the most vivid and vibrant one, worked out the best. For that, I was thinking about using some glue. And then I remembered I had this puzzle glue. And I thought this was going to be like a white Elmer's school glue, but it's actually like a clear gel. And oh my God, I might be going to this from now on to seal my ink. This worked really well, and I was just experimenting, and it also just made that color more vibrant and just pop right out. So this worked really well. Puzzle glue. Who'd have thought, right? It's better than a sealer, actually. It gave it a nice gloss. It did not make the ink bleed, and it made the color more vibrant. So before I cut it out and stick it to the sign, I am just using a little bit of watered down brown acrylic just to dirty it up. And I'm just adding a little bit and letting it run down naturally. I'll let that dry and cut the piece out. So this is going to be like that little sticker that you see over street signs or street posts that somebody will randomly just stick there. So it's going to be a little, kind of like a little bumper sticker on the dairy sign that says, "This is it." And the other idea I came up with was to maybe add some bullet holes in the marker sign. And I thought this was more appropriate. So I'm just going to glue this little sticker right in place. And I have curled up a couple of the corners just to look like it's been there for a while and it's peeling off. Okay, going back to the stumps, I'm choosing different colors for these. I'm going to use my burnt sienna, raw umber, and the desert sand for highlights. But I'm also going to add a little bit of light gray as well later on. And you can use a light gray instead of a beige highlight. It's all up to you on what colors you want to choose. I'm going in with the raw umber first because it's a darker brown and I've completely forgot I had it. So I'm going to use this and I'm just going to brush it over the black. I'm not completely painting these. I'm just brushing over the surface. I still want all that black to be in the crevices. I'm not giving it full coverage. I'm just dry brushing this layer on. Next, I'm going in with that burnt sienna, and it really gives it that reddish brown tone. But again, I'm just lightly brushing the surface. It's not hitting all of the areas, so it's leaving that darker undertone. Okay, now I'm going to go in with the desert sand and give it a nice dry brush of that just to add in some highlights. And you could just keep going with your layers until you like how it's looking. You don't have to settle if you don't like how it looks. Just try different things. You can let your layers dry in between, add more highlights, add more lowlights as you go along. But this is where I'm at. And I've created this from that. And I'm going to go in with some more highlights, so some lighter highlights. And this is where you can add lighter grays, give it more of an ash look. I'm going in with this taupe kind of color that I created. I'm just lightly dusting a dry brush on here, and I'm just highlighting some of those details that I want to pop out a little more. Last, I'm going to go in with some black to tone down some of those areas and add some shadowing in some other areas. So you can go in with your black if you've got some brighter areas that you want to tone down a little bit. You want to add some contrasting shadows. Adding the black really helps to give a little more depth to your piece and make some of these areas look a little deeper. Now that my pieces are dry, I want to add one more detail to them. I'm going to use some of this foliage flocking and tacky glue, and I'm just going to add some of this onto the stumps. I don't want to add too much. I just want to add a little bit here and there, but I can definitely see how easy it can be to get carried away with this stuff. I'm trying to keep it looking as natural as possible. Here is my old pile of wood, and I'm not going to use all of these pieces in one pile. I'll just pick a few, make a pile, and then scatter the rest about the project. Okay, a quick look at before and after the stumps, and keep in mind that the bigger piece you choose, the bigger the stump size is going to end up to be. I really love how these came out, and I feel like adding some of these techniques really brought the bark up a few levels. So I'm going to go ahead and install these pieces into the ground. I won't be able to use this big one. I'm going to keep in mind that I need to use smaller pieces, and I'm glad that I chose smaller pieces. Here's my pile of wood, and now it's time to put everything into place. Okay, tiny friends, that completes today's episode of the Pet Cemetery. I hope you all have enjoyed today's episode, and if so, please click that like button and give it a thumbs up and let me know what you think of the tree stumps and how it's looking so far in the comments below. I'm thinking one more episode and I should be able to complete this front section. I pretty much have everything laid down that I want to include unless I get more ideas. But I do have some more areas to work on. I want to add a few more pieces to the bottoms of the stumps. I need to cover up that dirt that's visible around the edge and work on the path. So, with all that said, I'm hoping to be able to have this section completed so that I can move on to the cemetery part, which is going to take a lot of work. I'm going to be working on the landscaping in the next episode and maybe add another tree stump because I really loved making those. I'm definitely going to make more for the rest of the project, but I'm going to try to get one more in this front section, a smaller one, and just if I come up with anything to add from then to now. But I think the next episode will be mostly adding in the rest of that landscaping. As always, I like to thank you all for watching and subscribing, and welcome to all my new subscribers. Thank you all so much for your support. And until next time, tiny friends, I hope you all have a lovely day, and I will see you all on the mini side. Bye bye.